So we're heading into spooky season in a big way, so grab your jack-o'-lantern carving kits and bleed out some pumpkin spice latte, and let's get into this. Hey, welcome to The Right Way, where we talk book recs, author interviews, and creative writing tips. I'm your host, Garrett K. Jones, and this is the full episode for the month of October. I really hope you enjoyed the season opener, as it provided a list of all the episodes that will be coming out through the end of the calendar year. I've got an exciting show planned for you for this month, but before I jump into anything, here are just a few announcements. So the first video in my new series, Finding Fiction, is up on Patreon. This video essay does a deep dive into the Mission Impossible film franchise starring Tom Cruise. It's currently available up on Patreon, and you can get access to it and all my other content for as little as $5 for the month. But if you want to wait, and there's no problem with that, it will be available here on YouTube on October 31st. Someone asked me why I decided to jump onto this franchise instead of something that's a little bit more thematic for Halloween, and my comment was that what is more in line with putting on costumes and fooling people than a group of spies literally putting on rubber masks and pretending that they're other people? It happens in at least once every movie in the franchise. Lastly, the big event I have coming up is the Moonlit Revelry Ball, held on February 7th at the Visalia Convention Center in Visalia, California. This event will be equal parts fantasy author convention and fantasy formal dinner and dance. As far as I'm aware, tickets are still available, but they're going fast, so you better hurry up and get yours. As I mentioned last week in the season opener, I want to shake things up just a little bit. The content is going to be more or less the same for this segment, but if you notice, I'm not calling it top 10s anymore, I'm calling it book recs. First of all, this bumper already has the phrase in the video, and I want to give a little bit more freedom to my guest hosts who are coming on and doing this content. I'm giving them the opportunity to either put together a top 10 list if they want, or if they want, they can provide a complete book review of a title that they have really enjoyed. With that said, my first guest host has been on the channel before as both an interviewee and as a guest host. She is the author of several horror books, and she owns her own bookstore in Indiana. She's also probably one of the coolest book cover designers I've ever encountered. With that said, I'd like to reintroduce you all to Ashley Greathouse.
Hello, my name is Ashley Greathouse, and this is going to be my top 10 reader obsessions currently. The list does change, but number 1. Catfish John and Other Stories by Joseph Persinger. This author is, I would want to claim him as a multi-genre author. He does delve more into like the fictional stories. But these stories right here dabble into some darker bits, and I'm here for it. And then the entire Paxton Locke series by Daniel Humphreys is pretty amazing. Like, seriously, it doesn't get any better than that. You had me at magic, to be honest. But I also read spicy stuff, and I do kind of dig how much this does feel sleep token coded. But yeah, I like spicy things. This is absolutely amazing. Very spicy. 4 guys fall in love with 1 girl. Yes, absolutely. Sign me up. And And we're going to go back to Daniel Humphreys, because if you're going to do zombies, do it like this. There's a reason why he got this badge of honor, you know what I mean? Like, do it like this. There's also Geneva Rose. I may be obsessed with the author, but like in a healthy way. You know what I mean? Like, please, Geneva, don't like do a cease and desist. But if you want to be friends with me, that's cool too. But yeah, this one's good. I don't even think I'm going to have to explain myself with this one. Yeah. Yeah, this counts as one, by the way. Frida McFadden is another one that is just good. Just good. There's a reason why her books are being turned into movies. If you haven't read any of them, I think this should be your very first one. Just, go with the surrogate mother right off the bat. Gone Girl. Was the movie better than the book? Her Soul to Take. I absolutely loved this book, but I have not read any more of the series. I loved this book, okay? I liked this one, and I wanted to end it there, but a lot of people love the rest of the series, and I love that. And maybe I will one day, but I liked this one. I like this one. We're going to go back to Madison Jacobs for a second, because Redemption. This one is spicy. It's like mocha spicy. Okay, it's not really dark romancy, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful, and it restored my faith in humanity. Everyone should read this book. Also, I want to lie in a cornfield until this happens to me. Just saying. At the end of the day, I'm also a mom, and we just read this book to kids. It's so cute. It's adorable. Move your body, okay? Get this book for your kiddos. Also, The Boxcar Children is absolutely amazing. It's amazing. Okay, time travel is cool and all, but what if it was different? What if it was different? Doppelganger. This is a series, and you're sleeping on it, and I don't understand why. I think I may have done more than 10 or less than 10, but I'm gonna stop myself there, because I'm in an entire bookstore right now, and I could go on all day long. So we're gonna end it there. Thank you for listening.
I was pleasantly surprised by the overwhelming response that I got to my call for doing interviews for the show. As I mentioned last week, I had most of my interview slots filled within 24 hours after making my post on Instagram. And so this month's interview guest was actually one of the first to sign up. So please join me in welcoming Canadian author Gabriel Chmilar. All right, Gabby, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me. Please tell me about what you write and the books that you have produced.
Well, thanks for having me. I write modern fantasy books with a bit of like romance in there. It's not full. I mean, yes, there's romance in there. It's kind of like how people live, right? You do things, you fall in love, you don't fall in love, you fall out of love, all that stuff. So it's just kind of like it's a modern fantasy book set in real time. By real time, I mean the 2020s. So, Solum is my first debut book. It's been out for about 2 years now. I rewrote it, republished it. It's all on Kindle Unlimited, and you can get the ebook on Amazon right now. But yeah, it's based in Canada, where I grew up in Edmonton, and it has kind of a Buffy the Vampire vibe, where there's demons and magic happening in modern times. And then a sequel's coming out in December. So really excited for that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
To catch you in between. So how'd you get into writing? Was this something that you've always wanted to do, or did you just you wake up one day and you're like, I've got a book in me. I need to get it out.
50-50, I guess, on that. I've always written stuff. As a kid, that was my hobby. That's what I did at home. I wasn't very much a outdoorsy person. I didn't do a lot of sports. So I wrote a lot of fanfics. I wrote a lot of stories and read a lot of books. And then as you grow older, you get into college, you find a job, you kind of lose all that stuff. And then COVID hit. And then I'm like sitting there in my apartment going, what did I do before money, a car, and work? Like, what did I do before that? I wrote stories. So it started out as a fanfic, and then it turned into, you know what? I could just wipe all that and then write an actual book. So then I did.
So, Gabby, tell me what some of your inspirations are as a writer, because obviously you mentioned that there's kind of a Buffy the Vampire Slayer vibe to your series, and obviously fantasy is a big draw for you. What are some of the other inspirations that you draw from?
I draw from a lot of like early 2000s, maybe 90s adventure movies. So like Princess Bride, The Mummy, Zorro, right? Like things like that. Things that make you want to be a hero even if the circumstances are not there for you. So there's a lot of that going on. So Solum, I don't know if you read the back or whatever. It's about a guy named Bennett. He's kind of a misfit. He doesn't really know what's going on with himself. He thinks he has medical anxiety. So whoever his psychiatrist, therapist prescribed him some pills. And those pills actually don't do anything for him because he doesn't have anxiety. Actually, the pills are somehow suppressing his magic ability. So every time he gets an anxiety attack, it's actually the magic trying to come out because it's never been used. So it's just like a bottle or a soda pop. You shake the bottle and it explodes. So that's what he's been doing. He's been suppressing it for so long that now it's just kind of like exploding, and he's exploding.
That's really cool. So we talked a little bit about some of the challenges that came about with COVID 5 years ago.
Right.
What are some of the other challenges or some of the biggest hurdles that you had to overcome in your writing career?
Because I'm so new, I feel new. Well, not as new, but like when I first started out, I didn't know how much process it takes to write a book. People, you just like write a book and you're done. Or you write a book and you edit it once or twice and you're finished. It's like, no, you gotta finding that perfect scene or finding that perfect sentence takes a very long time. And I'm not a patient person. So it's very frustrating to not get it right the first time. And then doing rewrites and rewriting everything. You don't realize how much rewriting you do for one book. And you gotta really love the story that you're telling, because you're gonna be reading it 1,000 times.
Oh yeah. So if you had any advice for other would-be authors out there who are new to the game or they're wanting to get published or whatever, what advice would you give them?
Make author friends. Always, like, obviously find people who you vibe with and who can write with you or whatever, but it's nice to have author friends, because when I started, it was just me. And then being an island isn't as productive as you would think as an author, because as an author, who are you asking questions if you don't know anything? Nobody. So make author friends. Find them on Instagram, find them on TikTok, find them somewhere, because the other writers will take you. And they will share their advice or their hardship. And it's nice to share. And even if you don't want to ask them questions or you don't want tips or anything, if you don't even want that, it's still nice to share a paragraph that you're proud of and say, hey, I wrote this. And then they'll be like, hey, that's great, right? Like, water your flowers, and other people will water your flowers, because it's hard to write something and nobody's reading it. It sucks.
Yeah. It's really good to get plugged in as much as possible with other authors, because the writing community is surprisingly supportive of its own.
Yeah, it's really supportive. Even if you say, hey, I'm new, I don't know what I'm doing here, a bunch of people will be like, I did this, maybe it'll work for you, or I did this, maybe it'll work for you, right?
So we're coming up to the end of the interview, Gabby. How can people connect with you? How can they get copies of your books?
Again, I said that my book, Solum, and the sequel, Paria, it's on Amazon Prime. You can order it as an ebook or paperback. I'm also on Kindle Unlimited, so that's really easy. And if you want to chat with me about anything, I'm on Instagram, gm.chmilarauthor. Oh, I think I said that wrong. My Instagram is at gmchmilar.author, and it's the same as my TikTok, at gmchmilar.author.
Very cool. Any last thing that you need the listeners or the watchers out there to know?
I also narrate books. So if you want to listen to me talk to you, I have a couple books out on Audible. They're called Unearthed, and I'm working on Unbound, and they're written by a really good friend of mine, SM Webb, and she writes very awesome, low spice romance fantasy books.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, Gabby, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
In preparation for Season 8, I wanted to jump back into basics and talk about some of the mythology and folklore, and to a lesser extent, urban legends that have inspired me as a writer. As a kid growing up, these were the content areas that I most enjoyed in school. The reason is because they lean into the fantastical, in some instances, the supernatural. It is with that in mind that I will be focusing this season's Creators Corner content on this very topic. Each month, I'll be discussing 2 or 3 influences, and since it's October, I decided to turn into the skid and focus on something spooky. This month, we're going to be talking about the villain of Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, as well as the Algonquin myth of the Wendigo. I was a kid when I first got introduced to The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Of course, I didn't get introduced to it through the book, but through the Disney animated short film narrated by Bing Crosby. I loved this animated film because of how much of a risk Disney took with bringing it to life. It was spooky, it was scary, and it was legitimately one of the things that had me scared of covered bridges for several years until I was at least in my teens. That and watching Beetlejuice as a 7-year-old kind of set the tone for me that covered bridges were just not safe. So aside from the maniacally laughing Disney animated version, I was exposed to 2 other versions of this character. The first version I encountered was in my teens, and that was the live-action version played by Christopher Walken in the 1998 Tim Burton film Sleepy Hollow. This version took historical elements, mainly German Hessian soldiers, fighting alongside the British during the American Revolution. Walken plays one such soldier with an unquenchable bloodlust, who ended up losing his head and was summoned back into service by a witch. Obviously, the film takes some liberties from the Washington Irving tale. The story never actually describes why the Headless Horseman is doing what he does. A bit about him being a Hessian is a legitimate basis, though, in the story. The third version that I came across in my 30s was from the Fox television program Sleepy Hollow, which follows Ichabod Crane as a soldier fighting against the British in the American Revolution, who was somehow brought back to life in the 21st century and is dealing with the repercussions of some of the things he encountered out on the battlefield, including, but not limited to, the Headless Horseman coming back. I think it's a series that should have run for 1 season and culminated with the destruction of the Headless Horseman. The story would have been a lot stronger, but they went on for 3 more seasons and felt like a weird blend of Sherlock meets Supernatural meets Charmed. There's a lot of Creature of the Week episodes to pad the runtime of each season, and most of the stuff involving the Headless Horseman is relatively short-lived and contained mostly to season 1. But I've recently learned that the Headless Horseman is actually based on a creature from Irish folklore called a Dullahan. A headless rider on a black steed, or a coachman carrying his own head? Check. The creature's name comes from Irish Gaelic, meaning fierce or angry. It's a malicious entity and will do harm to travelers on the road. In some versions, the rider wields a flaming whip. Now, you can adapt it how you'd like, but what I did was I created a character in my 4th book, Hadron Corvus of Farfell, called Moet. This was a character who was consumed by rage and malicious intent for the protagonist and is allowed to be consumed by a set of demons using him as a sort of executioner. While the character is not headless, his face does turn into a skull, and he wears black robes and a hood and wields a flaming sword. Since I used Hebrew pronunciations and words for the basis of the Farfellian language, the character's name is taken from the word Maveth, or in biblical Hebrew, Moth. Both words mean death. Now let's turn our attention to the Wendigo. I had a passing recognition of the creature in my youth from reading Marvel Comics. The Wendigo was a frequent minor antagonist of Wolverine. But it wasn't until I was 19 and living in Japan when I caught the first season of Charmed, and one of the episodes featured a Wendigo. In this version, the creature is more like a werewolf that can change from human to beast during the phases of the full moon, and became a monster because she had a frozen heart. They're typically women, apparently, in this version. The true folklore is way, way, way more frightening. The Algonquins told this story for generations as a lesson against cannibalism, especially during the harshest of winters when food is scarce. And the legend goes that to consume human flesh, especially to survive starvation, opens a pathway for the Wendigo spirit to inhabit a person and they become a Wendigo. The description of a Wendigo was a lanky, emaciated figure, not some hairy lycanthrope. Oh God, no, anything but that. In more modern adaptations, the creature takes on a lanky skeletal visage, but the face looks like a deer skull with antlers and sharp wolf-like fangs, which actually pop out in that Sleepy Hollow TV series that I mentioned earlier. The most accurate depiction I've seen is in the first season of Supernatural on the CW, which sticks to that lanky, emaciated figure. In the original drafts of my first book, I had a character named Gwendolyn who becomes infected and turned into a Wendigo in line with what I saw in that episode of Charmed. I later scrapped the character because I had a bloated cast and I needed to streamline my story when I revamped it. But I brought the character back for book 5, The Mantle of the Fatherless. Her name is Gavenna, and she was part of a tribe called the Kilha-Nashpa, an offshoot of elves who lived as skinwalkers, often taking on the appearance of direwolves through magic. Now, because of an event at the end of book 4, she comes into possession of a medallion containing a demon spirit that helps her be a healer, but also manifests intense hunger. Eventually, she transforms into a monster through a perversion of her people's magical abilities, and she rampages through the Arctic wilderness that she calls home. The creature in this story is called Venic, and it's an epithet that her people use to refer to anyone who engages in cannibalism. So here are 3 tips for adapting either of these folklore entities. First, do your research. Obviously, back in the late 90s and early 2000s, the producers of Charmed really played off of superficial understandings of the folklore. Do one better and research the origins of why the stories are told. The Dullahan represents danger while traveling on the road at night, especially if you pass by a graveyard. The Wendigo is a cautionary tale about the dangers of cannibalism. Second, you don't have to look for an original way to use the stories for your own writing. If you want to write a story of someone camping in the woods and facing starvation, turn into the skid and incorporate the folklore, even if it's a modern setting. A great example of this is the 2021 horror movie Antlers, starring Kerry Russell. Third, have fun with writing the story. If you can creep yourself out by what you're writing, then you're probably on the right track. Hey, thanks for watching. Did you like the content? If you did, please hit like, hit subscribe, and click the bell for notifications on new videos just like this one. A big thank you to my guests Ashley Greathouse and Gabriel Chmilar. If you'd like to connect with either guest, or if you'd like to be a supporter of the channel through Patreon, the merch store, or Cash App, you can find all of those links down in the video description. Don't forget to tune in next Saturday for the first live stream of Season 8, where I will be reading a short story from my recently released anthology of short stories, Midnight Playground. I'll see you then, and keep on writing the right way.